being an entrepreneur sounds cool, but the reality of building a business is very, very difficult. Every level that you hit, there's a lot of things that suck that you just won't want to do. What you're capable of is on the other side. I don't feel like it.
And if you're committed to what it is that you're trying to do, nothing is going to stop you from getting there. Welcome back to another episode of Real Business Owners with myself, Trevor Cowley. This week, I had the pleasure of speaking with an individual named Luke Peters. I know you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. He was in business for 20 years. We talked about how he didn't really figure it out until about year 15. But those last 5 years, he really put together a good run and ended up exiting his business for mid-8 figures. I'm excited for you guys to take a listen. And if you're ready to level up, you guys know what to do. Go to joinrbo.com. Let me ask you this. Like you said, you took a couple years off after exiting your company, right?
Yep.
Like when you exited your company, did you go through like a relief, or was it sadness? Was it joy? Like what was kind of the emotion that you experienced after putting your life into it over that period of time to grow this thing and then to say goodbye to it?
Yeah. So it's 20 years. So, but I wasn't totally married to it like some people might feel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was
It
cool.
was emotionalist. Like it was like you kept it what it was, which was a business.
That's right. That's right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I will tell you, the biggest thing I remember is like I finally slept really good afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never been a good sleeper up until that point. That was the one thing I remember. I'm like, whoa, dude, I can sleep till 7:30.
Yeah.
You know,
You woke up like clarity and just feeling great with,
yeah, no stress every day. Yeah.
It's not uncommon to wake up and have that, your heart rate almost be immediately going in a state of stress almost.
Yep.
Like that's just such a normal state for your body to be in, and it doesn't even know how to relax. So when it wakes up, the alarm goes off, it's like, you know, you kind of get in stress mode, hustle mode, grind mode, like let's go get after it. And I totally get it. I still feel that. Like every time I wake up, I'm like, okay, let's go get my 10 miles in. You know, like I want to start chipping away at the day and start winning the day still, right?
Yep.
So when you took the 2 years off, did you just get to the point where it's like, I've got to move my mind and I've got to be doing something to stay busy? Did you go on a bunch of vacations? Like what was the 2 year gap look like? And then why re-enter the business space in terms of consulting and helping and serving people?
Okay, so what happens is when you sell a private equity, in my situation, they want to keep you on. So I sold.
Oh yeah, for 2 years, 3 years, something like that.
Well, it's not an earn out. It's nice. Like I wouldn't do an earn out. You know, this is more, they just incentivize. Well, you roll over money.
Yeah.
So a small part of your investment stays, right? So you stay on, you care. I mean, it's a partnership. And so you help them. And then after a while, I was able to promote from inside, you know, right-hand guy, he's CEO. So then I could step back. Okay. So that's how I step back. And then, I did some traveling. But what I found is that I was just too much at the house at everybody's beck and call. You know, I'm just sitting there, Dad, you know, can you get this right? Dad, can you cook this? I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, my kids are still, I have 6 kids. Okay. And it's like,
if you'll do it, they'll ask.
They'll ask.
Yeah.
And also it's an example, like, you know, they want to see, I'm sure they want to see Dad, you know, getting things done and working. And so I thought I got
the memory of Dad sitting on the couch for the rest of his days probably isn't one that you want the kids to have as a mental image of growing up. Even though you had become majorly successful, there's still one image that would be seared into the mind as Dad couch.
So that bothered me a little bit.
Yeah, I bet.
So that's how I got going.
So after a couple years, you decided, you know, hey, I need to get back in the game. Was there thoughts of like, hey, I just need to start another business? Or have you been like, I don't really actually want to get into the, you know, having to have 20, 30, 40, 50 employees type business? Like, kind of tell me your thoughts on that, because usually as an entrepreneur, you know, we get the itch to start multiple things. And that's another question I'm going to have for you a little bit later is, you know, as you're building one thing and it's growing and you have cash flow coming in and you're making good money, obviously you get the itch to start another something and another something. And, you know, and I have multiple ventures and the majority of them haven't worked, right? But I've tried so many that a handful have, right? And so tell me a little bit about that.
Oh man, I see eye to eye on that. I'm always like, I know some people are like focus, but I like to have a couple
irons in the fire.
A couple irons in the fire. So I got 2 right now.
Yeah.
So I've got the CEO coaching.
Okay.
The reason I did that is because basically a lot of friends always ask me, hey, what should I do here? Hey, take a look at this. Hey, what should I work on?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is pretty fun. I love looking at businesses.
Yeah.
It's fun. I got to, look under the hood and help them and solve problems.
What's the point of having experience if you're not really going to use it after the experience, right?
Well, that's another thing. Yeah. So I think I think business owners totally undervalue what they actually know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We always have that complex of like, well, I just barely made it here. And it's like, there's 10, 20, 30 years of experience. That's valuable.
Yeah. But even like the stuff that you think is basic and you say to somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, in their mind, like, what you wouldn't normally even discuss or talk about because it's such common sense is not common sense to some people.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're so far removed from year 1, year 2, year 3, and all of the things that somebody doesn't know that are still just and some of the stuff that you look at and you're like, dude, that's completely like, why aren't you doing this? Oh, that's such a good idea. And you're sitting there thinking like, what? Like that just seemed obvious.
Yeah.
Right. To go down that path. But sometimes it takes somebody that's not in the weeds to see the clear path, right? Like if you're up on the mountaintop, you're like, hey, go here. Here's the trail. You've already been there and done it, right? And you're sitting at the top yelling down at people, this is the way up. How frustrating is it to you when you say, hey, this is the way up, and then you get an excuse? Like, oh, well, I can't do that because this, and this, or I can't delegate that because nobody does it as well, or whatever the complex is that somebody might be struggling with that, really wants to buy their excuse more so than they want to relieve themselves of the problem, so to speak.
Yeah, I've run into that. Well, here's the thing. This is why. Well, in addition, I'm starting a product company. We can talk about that. Those are my 2 irons, right? And my main thing with the consulting was, will that annoy me? Exactly to your point. Will I be annoyed in a year and a half because I'm like, I know how I can get them from A to B.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it, which is fine. It's their business.
Yeah.
But am I just going to be annoyed? And so I want to have this other product business. But no, I've seen it like I think it's hard because like successful business people, of course, they're type A's usually.
Yeah.
Okay. They know what they want. And here's some other guy, like, I don't really know their business, but actually, a lot of times the problem is they're solving the wrong problem. That's what I've noticed. Okay. Especially if you're stagnant, you're solving the wrong problem. Okay. You go do year-end goals. Well, I'm going to grow, they haven't grown in, 3 years, but I'm going to double my business in the next 3. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, with the same people,
yeah,
with a little different strategy.
Did you notice that in order to get past certain levels and elevate your business to, 8 figures, that you had to level up kind of the staff around you and unfortunately let people maybe that have been around for 6, 7, 8 years go because like some people just don't want to evolve. That's one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur is watching somebody be around in the beginning phases and have so much potential and opportunity because they show up, they work hard, they have a good attitude. But at the end of the day, if they don't have the ability to grow, adapt, change, morph into something more so that they can fill that role that is now what the company needs, right? Because sometimes companies need more from individuals and you have the opportunity to grow up into the company or stay exactly where you're at or sometimes be left in the dust, right?
That was the number one thing I did actually. So 20 years, right?
Yeah.
It took me 15 years to realize that paying for the absolute top tier talent was the way to go.
That is spot on. An A player will do just as much as like 5 C players. Like that's what people don't understand. They're like, oh, well, we can't afford that. We can't afford that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you really want to advance your organization, you have to advance the personnel within your organization because you need new thoughts in there. You need new perspectives in there, right? New ways of doing things, new standards. And when you bring in an A player, they bring this energy about them and a standard about them that makes other people just want to level up and perform better. It's like a Michael Jordan on a team. It's like you could take an average player and put them next to Michael Jordan. They want to play better because they're playing next to one of the greats.
No, but it's like a sports team.
It is.
It's like, like I'm a basketball fan, right? And so it's like compare the Lakers to the Clippers. And I know the Clippers have gotten better, but for years, the Clippers were an embarrassment because they always had the worst players. And the Lakers would do, Dr. Buss would do whatever he could to recruit the best.
Yeah.
That's how you got to do it in business.
That's how he won championships.
Yep.
And that's why his brand and his organization is worth more.
Yep,
as
exactly.
Well, right?
Exactly.
So throughout the process, you had to experience lows. It's 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What did you do to overcome some of the lows that you were experiencing? Did you have a process? Did you turn to something? Some people are hyper religious, which is great. Some people, I turn to God, or hey, I turn to exercise, or what did you turn to kind of make it through some of those lows mentally when you're in the process of building?
I think a lot of business owners are the same, but I would have anxiety, of course, right?
Yeah.
It's like everything's on my back,
Yeah.
I would usually, of course, pray, things, because praying can be very meditative.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're repeating, it can be very meditative. But actually, also what helped is writing stuff down. Is obvious as that sounds. So sometimes,
like journaling or just writing down the problems that you were facing.
So when you're having a big problem, you're having trouble sleeping, you're like, this is a horrible moment, you're feeling terrible. But when you write down what's going good for me, you kind of do I make a little box, what are my pros, what are my cons? And then I'll add some other items in there. And you're like, whoa, it's actually not so bad. Like, okay, we got a lot of pros here. And you need to kind of get that out of your head and like put it on paper and because your brain will trick yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. You're always going to go worst case in your brain. And you got to put the pros on there. Like, wait a minute, my sales are, 50% higher than they were just a couple years ago, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, it's not so bad.
Find the pros. They're there. If you go far enough back and you get a high enough perspective by removing yourself from whatever the problem is that's keeping you down right now.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is you're looking at things that have gone good over an extended period of time, and you're finding the positive, finding the pros, because they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we just kind of put them off to the side because we're so focused on whatever the new problem is that we let that problem get us down or, overtake us.
Yeah, I'm sure you've read like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Right? And then later on, there's a book, I forget the author, but it's called Psycho-Cybernetics. It's about the guy was a plastic surgeon. Okay. And this is back in like the 50s or 60s.
Okay.
And he's not doing it for beauty. He's doing it because people are in car accidents. He's got to fix their face. Okay. And stuff like that. And he noticed that people had very bad confidence if they had an issue, with their appearance.
Scar.
Whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And he would fix it. And all of a sudden he noticed some of them would become super successful. You literally are what you think, right? If you think a bunch of trash about yourself, your body will literally go find it like a guided missile.
Yeah. If those are your thoughts, those are also going to be your emotions.
Yeah.
And what you feel. There's a lot of times when somebody's getting down or feeling hopeless about their business, I'm like, what's the thought that you think most? There's going to be a repetitive thought that they think most when they're at a low place. And usually is this ever going to be worth it? Let me ask you this. Do you think you're showing up in a manner that is going to produce 100% results if your mind or subconsciously you're sitting there saying, is this ever going to be worth it? How difficult is it to give something 100% of effort if you're still questioning whether it's ever going to be worth it? So it's a matter of shifting your perspective and shifting your thoughts on something else. Like, I'm going to hit X amount. I'm going to hit X amount, whatever that revenue number is. Or going back to, this is all going to be worth it. It's just part of the process. It's neuroassociation, right? Some people associate pain as bad and some people associate pain as progress, right? Some of the greats will say, they're getting their reps in. How many reps do you do? I don't really count until it starts burning. Because what they're saying is that's when progress is truly being made, is when the pain is starting to set in, right? So their neuroassociation is pain is good, pain is progress. Right? So the idea in this situation is, can you associate what you're going through as progress so that it doesn't feel like, is this ever going to be worth it? It's like, holy cow, there's going to be something good on the other side of this because of what I'm going through. Right? And shifting those thoughts, as you talked about, ask yourself what you're thinking most frequently and how can you take control of your thoughts more frequently so that you could dictate, how you're feeling or how you're showing up in the world, because you're just not going to give something 100% that you don't fully believe is going to be worth it. You got to buy all the way in, you know? And so otherwise you're not going to ever hire the A player.
No.
Because that takes a little bit of stretching to do. You almost have to hire the person prior to even being able to hire the person, where it's like, ugh. Because if it was easy just to hire A players because there's so much money coming in, then you're really not being a business owner and stretching yourself and kind of staying in that risk threshold of making your butthole pucker, I guess, just a little bit as an entrepreneur. Like, is this the right decision? Am I crazy? Did you go through some of those thoughts when you were making some of the decisions where it felt right, but then you would ask yourself slightly like, man, am I going crazy here a little bit? Like,
The thing is, what you learn is when you're worried, nervous, anxiety, you're stuck. Like, you actually are very unproductive. You can't, so you got to get out of that. And most of the time I waited probably too long for the hires. I think that's a common thing. Okay, can I afford it?
Yeah.
And then what I learned, I think what's more important is whether you wait for the hires or you make them at the right time, the more important thing is you have to know, like, first of all, to me, an A player is someone who's already done what I need them to do. I haven't sold into this like Home Depot, let's say, but I want someone who already has done it. They know the buyers, they know the deal.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they will not, first of all, you won't get them if you don't have the right company, because they're going to look at company culture. They're good.
Yeah.
Who am I going to? They vet.
Yes.
Say,
Who they're, because
that's right.
they understand that they're an A player.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost like a NBA player being like, well, I don't want to go here. Like they get to kind of pick and choose at one point, and then the other players just get traded and they wake up the next morning saying, hey, you've been traded.
That's right.
You know, so similar with A players. It's like you have to go through kind of a recruiting, dating, vetting process where they're like, oh, they're looking for something that they can invest the next 5 or 10 years of their life into and know that there's going to be a payout, right?
Yeah.
Like the A players aren't playing just for the paycheck.
Right.
The A players are playing because they're betting 5 to 10 years on the same company that you're betting on, which is your own business, right? And there's going to be a piece of the pie at the end of that rainbow for them. And so they're sitting there dating, who do I believe in? Company culture, who's going to get to the finish line, and how am I going to get my payday as well, right?
That's right. If you can build that in, which I was able to for the deal, and you tie it, you don't need to give them, because a lot of people would be like, well, I have to give them equity. And it's like, you do, but you can give it to them in a way where you're not, it's like sort of
all up at front.
Yeah. Or it's like, you're not actually having to like adjust your corporate docs. You could do it contractually. Okay.
Yeah.
It's legit. And you can also put it at a time that's a win for you too. Okay. I want to sell my business in 5 years. You let them know this is what it's going to look like. You're going to make $1 million if we get here.
Yeah.
And dude, they will just run through walls for you.
Yeah. I've noticed that too. So in terms of like the way that you structure your deals, you did it kind of off paper equity at the end of the deal, or was it slow, like vested kind of ghost equity, I guess, in this situation, right?
Yeah. There's, I don't know, there's different terms for it, like phantom equity, but it's basically, we were 100%, my wife and I were 100% equity owners.
Yeah.
We never brought in any investors, right? And I didn't want to open that up, but you can do it in a way where it's vested, but it's, like, let's say somebody wants to exit their business in a couple years. And there's a lot of people who want to, because, with the older generation, right? And when somebody comes to buy you, they know you're probably going to walk. You got to have leadership at the company where they're like, I'm buying the company and here's the leadership, right?
Yeah. So where you don't matter as much.
That's right.
And if you do, you're probably going to have to stay on for, 2 to 5 years or whatever.
Yeah. You got to work yourself out of that job.
Yeah.
So in order to, a good way to do that is to just, first of all, like, be very open with the leaders and show them, like, here's what an exit could look like. And I think it was called like a membership interest rights document. Any lawyer can put this together, but it's going to be vested. It's going to say, here's your present value of the company. Let's say the company's worth $20 million.
Yeah.
And then what value is added when they're there. Give them a percentage of that added value. Yeah. Of the growth.
Yes.
But make it real. Like, if you look at a couple of years and it's like $100,000, I mean, it's probably not going to do it for them. So you got to make it,
it's got to be juicy.
It's got to be juicy.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way you're going to get an A player. Sometimes people aren't, ready for A players, but at the end of the day, you have to get good at delegating. Would you say that you were a master team assembler when you moved your way up to kind of the CEO role, where you're more orchestrating things and leading meetings and getting the opinions and ideas of others, and then kind of making that final decision, to where most of the decisions that are being made are really the opinions of some of the A players around you. You just kind of pick and choose which one you want to run with?
Yeah.
Or was there a voting process with some of the A players? Like, hey, did you ever get overridden in terms of like a decision, things like that?
Oh yeah. Now we argued. I would never call myself a master because I was always learning, right?
Yeah, that's how I know you're a master, because masters are always learning.
Okay, yeah.
And there's you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the real true masters never say that they're a master because they just feel like, hey, I'm a forever learner, right?
Yeah, there's always, you always can look up and find someone else up there. But
yeah, exactly.
But no, I was definitely, I wouldn't have to go to work.
Yeah.
I could set the agenda.
Yeah.
I had certain areas that I really liked, which was
Yeah.
like marketing and product.
Okay.
So that if I wanted to really dig in, I love those areas.
Hang out in the marketing department.
Yeah, or the probably, annoying people.
We should like, oh, geez.
But you learn it's good. You have to be careful who you talk to, because if I go in and talk to someone in marketing and I give them direction, now all of a sudden that director of marketing loses a little bit of authority.
Yeah.
And so you learn these
start
things.
going to you.
They start
hey,
going
what
to
do
me.
you think about this?
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm causing problems here.
I'm scared.
Command.
Oh, that happens so much.
Org chart just barely jumped 3 people and went straight to your office now, huh? Let me ask you this. What avenues would you explore when you were looking for talent? Was it through your network? Was there, an Indeed? Was it like, what were the channels that you used to find the talent to be able to exit your business?
And I would break it into 2 steps. So step 1 is, remember, you're trying to get, Michael Jordan over to your team. He's not going to come play for you if he looks at your squad and he looks at your company and you're not ready. So first, you got to get ready. So that means every A player I've met, and this can be hard for some entrepreneurs who are sort of ADHD and all over, but every one of them wants process and organization in the company.
Yeah.
So you got to build, and then the other thing is you got to market your company. So we set a goal. I said, okay, we got to become best place to work. And that was my HR's goal. Of course, we could go do some of our hires, but literally an executive recruiter was getting us the best hires.
Gotcha.
And I had
going to somebody that was an expert at going down certain channels.
That's right.
It knew the right people.
Yep.
And you would pay their 10 or 20% finder's fee.
33.
Wow.
33. Okay. And 33 on somebody who's making
100, 200. Yes. You're paying 50 grand for them to find the right A player.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because
it's almost like an agent.
It is like listen, if you go to the cheaper ones, what they're doing is they're just putting people in front of you. They're just hoping you say yes. You go to the good ones, their reputation is on the line. If this person doesn't work out, it's like, oh, there was a problem. So they're really invested in it.
You have to know exactly what role they're going to fill and what you're willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
If you're ready to start leveling up as a business through the staff, you're going to have to start running your numbers and understand who you're going to pay what and what you're willing to pay. Because when you start actually mapping it out, what's weird about it is it's clear, it's defined, and you start finding the right people to help you get where you're trying to go. But if you're just all over the place, nothing's ever defined, you don't really even know what you need. You just know you need help. The idea is eventually hiring people that you just don't have to manage.
Yeah.
That just that's really what the A players do is they're very proactive. They take stress off your plate. They don't add stress to it. Right. Employees usually add stress. Hey, I'm sick. I'm this. I can't make, the kind of the low level excuses. What would you say the most difficult part about running a business is? It's human beings. You can have a perfect business idea, but then you add the human element in it and it makes it complicated. When you were going through the process of exiting, how long did that take? Some people say it could take years depending on, how big the organization is and the size of the deal. It's like they almost want to start dating you for a period of time and get updates on financials and see certain things and see some consistency before cutting a big check.
It depends who you're going to sell to, right? If you're going to sell to private equity, which is a good goal, by the way, if you're going to go that way, you'll usually get a better multiple than if you kind of like have to sell and go to a business broker. Ideally, you would get your business ready, which could take a couple years. Okay, but let's say it's ready.
When you say a couple years, why would it take a couple years?
Okay. So it may not, but it'll take a couple years for this reason. I'll tell you. So I was getting calls all the time and I'm like, yeah, I think I want to sell. And I'm like, what do I need to have?
Yes.
Okay. And he told me, okay, well, Luke, in your industry, now this is all different industries, right?
Yeah.
In your industry, you have to be making over 10% EBITDA. And if you're not, it's going to cause a problem because basically a buyer is going to be like, you're making 5%. Like what's the value of the brand you're bringing in? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's an EBITDA requirement. And you want to be above that. And then it was, how about your accounting? What do you have? What are you doing? Do you have audited financials? I'm like, well, I got reviewed. He's like, well, reviewed, or anybody can get reviewed.
And now you got to pay to get your shit audited.
Not only that, you got to have the system. You have to have the people who can actually internally get you audited, and then you got to pay to get it audited. Yeah. You got to have the right accounting team. So I had to build that out, and those were like the two. And then of course you want to show a 3-year track record.
Yeah.
Right?
So my thing is that what I was going to say is sometimes you shift the numbers around to pump up. That's what some people do if they're preparing to sell.
Right.
Like they do get the financial professionals to make the numbers look like what they need to look like. So for instance, if somebody's, salaries and all that stuff kind of get fed back in, and it's not really that big of a deal. That's what some people think. Like if they're operating at, 15% margins, and they're paying themselves 15%, that 15% that they're making gets thrown back into the evaluation as part of profit. Is that right?
If the business is smaller, they'll look at something called seller discretionary earnings.
Okay.
Okay.
That's your income.
That's basically your income, right?
Yeah.
If it's bigger, they're going to look at EBITDA. Okay. So like different buyers for different businesses. What I found is with smaller businesses, let's say the owner is making great money, right?
Yeah.
But he's working 80 hours a week. Okay. And he doesn't have any A players. But now let's turn that around and look at your business, your accounting business. You have a hired CEO in there. So a lot of people have a business, but they have a job.
There's a big, big difference in owning a business and the business owning you.
It's exactly the point, because you go hire those A players, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden your company's not making any money. Is that because you hired the A players, or is that because your whole premise and your margins and your product maybe isn't commanding enough in the marketplace? So you got to make your margin and have the A players.
Yeah.
And then, boy, now you've got a real business.
Yeah. That's what's tough to see is, well, my margins are good. I'm at 40%. And it's like, you have no overhead.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If they're like a solopreneur.
Yeah.
And they're using their own truck to go from side job to side, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you don't have a secretary, you don't have a building or an office or a lease, and you're not doing marketing yet. You don't have employees to where you're matching payroll taxes. You don't have insurance. You don't, like all of the things. And I was talking to somebody, they're like, oh yeah, everybody else is just such a ripoff with their bids and this, and my margins are good. And I said, you don't understand their overhead. They have to charge that for what exactly you're talking about, so that they can hire A players and still have some wiggle room to where they have the ability to make money and the business doesn't own them. It's obviously a process. You talked about 15 years or something like that. And then maybe that last 5 years is where you started putting some pieces together, bringing in the A players. Right. And I don't know what it is with that number. It's like people got to get into their teenage years of owning a business.
I think so.
And like beating their head against the wall. It's like, we can give them this free information. And I would say that it would be worth it to not make any money for a couple years at year 5 and 6 and surround yourself with great players, because by year 8, 9, and 10, you're a very, very happy business owner because you're making money and you decide when you show up and when you don't show up, right?
Yeah.
Versus staying kind of locked in. When you first started making money in business, were you a little juvenile with your behavior when that money first started coming, buying the houses and the cars and quickly moving up? Or were you one of the ones that, saved every dollar, put a chunk away, knowing that they're a business owner and that maybe there's going to be periods of time where they're going to have to eat off of what they made previous as they're scaling?
Yeah, I was a ladder. I was always, I grew up in a big family. Okay. And so I worked since I was a kid. I'm working at it's like, I knew the value of money.
Yeah.
I always tell a joke. My dad paid me 25 cents an hour, so when I started making money, we eventually bought nice houses, but that's real estate. It's it's an investment. But still drive an older truck, and I never was really into things.
Yeah. Flashy. It's almost like in marriage, they say it's like the 7-year itch. It's like, I swear businesses have like a 7-year itch, where it's like you do good for a period of time and then you'll hit a lull or hit a dip.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of the period of time where you find out what you're really made of, is because businesses beat you up so much over 5, 6, or 7 years, and then you hit a low and you maybe weren't managing your finances well, and you have to come back in with your own personal money or whatever. Like, there's plenty of times that I've seen people put themselves in situations where they literally remove themselves from entrepreneurship because they lived a little too high on the hog when the money first came in, and they had to take from the business to fuel a lifestyle, and now both are at jeopardy, right? Have you seen stuff like that?
Totally. I would say, what's interesting about that comment is I think, okay, if you look at good businesses, like, and we're talking maybe they've got venture investors, like people who have been there before.
Yeah.
As soon as there's a down, like as soon as the numbers look bad, they're freaking out and they're cutting and they're right sizing their business. In the typical,
Gotta make cuts.
But what I'm saying, what we can learn from that though is what I did sometimes is I stretched it too long on a bad.
Yeah.
Like the number one is like most small mid-sized businesses don't have great accounting and great accounting leadership.
Not at all.
It's like,
not at all.
Here's your numbers, here's your trending. Hey, you got to make these, and they're
Most
just like
of them
living
don't
in
know their numbers.
No, most of them don't even know their numbers.
It's like, shit, it's the end of the year again. We got to hurry, do 12 months of book,
That's right.
and scramble script, and now it's another stress on top of everything else, right? But that's a stress that you created because you chose not to,
right?
Stay on top of
decisions.
Yeah.
You don't have that.
Let me ask you this. After getting a chunk of money, obviously you want to put that money to good use, right? Like, you're not going to just have a load of money in the bank. Did you start investing into different things and, playing with your money a little bit here?
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the things that you are into or started getting into, maybe in that 2-year period when you were hanging?
Well, by the way, I liked your podcast. I don't know what, like 2 weeks ago or something, is about kind of your experience with money. And it really resonated.
7 figures.
Yeah. That was a good one, actually.
Yeah.
And really what's interesting is, I think the takeaway I had, which is different for everybody, but it's your takeaway, which is you're not giving anybody else your money. Like, you want to be in control of your money. I like that. That resonates.
Nobody loves my money more than me.
That's right. And you know how hard you work for it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm pretty diversified. I think it's hard because there's a lot of doom and gloom if you watch too much financial news. So you need to be careful with the doom and gloom and not just like hide away. So I'm very diversified into, equities and then some tax advantage bonds.
Okay.
But I also do like a lot in real estate.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I love real estate.
You do cost seg and all that for the tax.
Well, you know what? I wish I had been more direct investments. I'm an LP on a lot of deals.
Okay.
Because it's just been easier because I've got my hands in so many things.
Yeah.
So I'm mostly an LP with some of my own properties that we bought.
Yeah.
And then but there's a lot of other things too. There's, now you can buy crypto on the exchanges. And so that's done really, really good. Okay.
Yeah.
So
very, very good.
I'll tell you, my one thing is that I've learned. Now I know this will be everybody, could look at this differently when the shit hits a fan, if there is an event like that.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that I've learned is I'm always going to make the most money in my business, not in my investing. But after you sell, the number is so big that, okay, now you can do it with your investing.
Yeah.
Prior to selling, it's like, you're always going to make more money in your business.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is investments are like a bar of soap. The more you touch them, the smaller they get. So you've got to be, in my opinion, you want to be diversified into a lot of these things. But if you keep, something happens and you pull it out or you switch it, you're just going to totally wreck your investments.
Well, I would say don't start investing unless you're playing a long game. When I wasn't playing the long game and I was looking for the home run, I was highly emotional based upon the ups and downs of that investment. And it ultimately cost me a lot of money because when it hit a low, I removed myself from, any risk, but then the very following day I could have made 350 grand based upon that. Right. So it was literally under 24 hours that I made a split decision because I wasn't playing a long game that ended up costing me, that's 425,000 in terms of just a 12-hour time frame.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the emotional resolve. I wasn't playing a long game. And if you are investing, there will be periods of time where whatever you're investing in might hit a low. How often did you utilize just, hey, I'm going to trust my gut on this one and have it pay off? And how many times did you not trust your gut and maybe see something that, didn't turn out in a manner that was ideal?
We're all emotional, right? So you want to kind of blend the numbers with the emotions. You know what's an interesting point on that about trusting your gut is, as a business owner, one reason you get worn out is because you're making every decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Decision fatigue.
Every freaking decision.
Yeah.
No, and nobody can make a decision, but that's where it comes to getting the best players in the team.
Yeah.
Because what you realize is like how hard it is to find people who can make a decision and execute. It's like a very rare thing. Okay. It's like 5% of the people.
When you find the unicorn, pay for the unicorn, it's kind of worth it.
But no, I would go with my gut because I think it was a good yin yang. You get the really incredible players, and they're usually very organized. Sometimes they don't have the creativity, okay? And you as the entrepreneur should have the creativity.
Yeah.
And so you balance that. You're like, hey, we got to try this, we got to try that. And, eventually they'll push back, and they should. If they don't push back, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like if you're not getting, I'm not saying you're
all yeses.
Yeah, if you get all that, then
I can just talk to myself in the mirror then.
You got the wrong people if that's the issue. So, but absolutely, I've been wrong a million times, but I think taking those shots is what you have to do.
Yeah. At what point in building the business were you the closest to quitting? Just to give a little bit of context, because nobody's immune to, some of those thoughts at low points, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I would ever walk away because, the thing is with the family, there's so much pressure to succeed. Pressure is good to an extent. If you don't have pressure on you, I mean, it's what drives you, right? Otherwise, you just
succeed out of necessity almost.
Yeah, no, you want to do it because you want to do it, but it's okay to have a little push. There was one time where we switched ERP. We had to move warehouses 7 times, by the way. And I wish I had bought some of those, but the thing is, we kept growing out of them, and so eventually I'm in 200,000 square feet. I start in a garage. Then we're in,
you think you're crazy for getting this big of a space. And then like 2 years later, you're like, dang, we got a 5-year lease. How do we? Yeah,
that's right. Well, there was one time we moved warehouses. So we were going from 35,000 to 85. Okay. And we got, and this inventory business, we're selling appliances, wine coolers, beer coolers, refrigerators, stuff like that. You don't just sign a lease and show up at the new place. Like this is a process, right?
Yeah.
And
it's a whole logistics concept that has to be tried.
It's a big logistics movement. There's a lot of, millions of dollars of inventory, I don't know, $5-10 million of inventory has to be sold and moved, right? At that time, probably 5-10 million. And then the system wasn't shipping the orders correctly. So we got the new warehouse, we racked it up. Just to rack it up, you're paying, for this warehouse, like $500,000 just to rack it. The orders were because we had to have 2 locations open, and there was just and it was our software, by the way. This is before we had gone to a tested, third party. This is just us writing our software. And it wasn't shipping. So we're not shipping to Home Depot. We're not shipping to Walmart, to Amazon. I mean, it could have lost the business right there.
Yeah.
So that was a very, very stressful time. It's one of those things where there were no overnight fixes.
So what year was that when you were dealing with that problem?
That was 2014.
2014?
Yeah.
So how many years into business was it?
So we started in 2001. So, so it was like 13 years.
13 years. Yeah. Something like that.
Maybe we were.
So that moment, there's some correlation there. That moment was so painful 12, 13 years in. By year 15, you figured out you needed some A players.
That's a great, actually, I never thought that way. I think you're on it. Yeah.
Yeah. You started hitting some thresholds that were just like, geez, there's got to be a better way. You were tolerating everything up to that point.
Yeah.
But when you get to a certain level, it's going to crush you. You can't just tolerate it.
Yeah.
Like you'll have to find solutions,
mm-hmm.
right? That's why it's always good to outgrow, where you're at,
mm-hmm.
because that's what you've done is find solutions to every problem. That's what business ownership is.
Yep.
So keep giving yourself just new problems and you'll solve them, right?
Yeah.
Because the pain will become too great to bear. Either you'll walk away or you'll figure out a way to address it, right?
Yep.
Or find somebody who is good enough too.
Hope you guys enjoyed today's show as much as I did. When somebody gives something, you feel obligated to give something back. And if you feel that obligation, please help us out rating, reviewing, and sharing the show. We put a lot of time and effort into it, and the only way that we're going to expand it is through you, the listener. Much love to you. Keep kicking ass. We'll see you next week.